Sarah Reeves had been watering the mulch for 3 months before Dr. Hendricks finally told her what it used to be. "A chair," he said, standing in the doorway of the greenhouse with his tablet and his perpetually worried expression. "Hand-carved mahogany, 19th century, Portuguese origin. Shaped like a reclining woman, apparently. Beautiful craftsmanship." Sarah looked down at the flower bed she'd been tending. Wood chips and splinters, scattered among the black soil and carefully arranged roses. Some pieces were as large as her thumb. Most were smaller than rice grains. All of them were the same warm reddish-brown color, like dried blood. "Someone destroyed an antique chair and you're keeping the pieces in a greenhouse?" She kept her voice light, but something about the way Hendricks wouldn't meet her eyes made her uneasy. "That seems excessive even for the Prometheus Institute." "It wasn't just destroyed. It was." Hendricks paused, searching for words. "Processed. Fed through an industrial wood chipper by another organization. The Collective, they call themselves. They specialize in eliminating objects and phenomena they consider dangerous." "A chair?" "An unusual chair." Hendricks finally looked at her, and Sarah saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before: fear. "It could teleport. Would appear next to people who needed to sit down, elderly folks, pregnant women, anyone exhausted or in pain. Completely benign. Helpful, even. The Collective decided it was an uncontrolled anomaly and needed to be neutralized." Sarah crouched down, studying the fragments more closely. In the 3 months she'd been caring for them, watering the bed, pruning the roses, speaking softly to the mulch like Hendricks had instructed, she'd never questioned why. The Prometheus Institute studied strange things. That was enough. "So they would ship a magic chair that helped people?" "Yes." "And now you keep the remains in a flower bed and have me water them twice a day and compliment them?" "Yes." "Why?" Hendricks was quiet for a long moment. "Because 14 members of the Collective's cleanup team died during the disposal operation." The chair fought back. Not before, it never showed any aggression before. But after they started feeding it into the chipper. He shook his head. "The fragments teleported into their lungs. All 14 people suffocated on splinters of the thing they were destroying." Sarah's hand jerked away from the mulch. "It's safe now," Hendricks said quickly. "As long as we treat it with respect. Kindness, even. We think it can sense intent, emotion. When we moved it here, planted the roses, started caring for it." The incident stopped. "It's been calm for 8 months. "Calm," Sarah repeated. "The traumatized remains of a helpful object that was brutally destroyed are calm. I know how it sounds." Sarah stood, brushing soil from her hands. She looked at the flower bed, really looked at it. The roses were thriving, blooming in shades of deep red that reminded her uncomfortably of the mahogany fragments beneath them. The mulch itself seemed to shimmer slightly in the greenhouse light, though that might have been her imagination. "What do you want me to do?" "Keep doing what you're doing. Water it. Talk to it. Let it know it's safe." Hendricks hesitated. "There's something else. The Collective is coming tomorrow. They want to inspect our facility, make sure we're properly containing dangerous materials. Standard cooperation agreement between our organizations, but they're going to see the thing they destroyed." "Yes." The thing that killed 14 of their people. Yes. Sarah looked down at the mulch. That seems like a bad idea. The worst, Hendricks agreed. But we don't have a choice. Just be here tomorrow. Keep it calm. We're hoping if it senses your presence, your regular care routine, it'll stay stable even with them in the room. The collective's inspection team arrived at 9 a.m. in black SUVs with tinted windows. 3 people, 2 men in tactical gear that seemed excessive for a research facility tour, and a woman in a severe gray suit who introduced herself as Director Kearns. Sarah watched them through the greenhouse glass as Hendricks met them in the parking lot. Even from a distance, she could read their body language, aggressive, authoritative, completely unconcerned with being here. They walked like people who owned the world and were annoyed at having to prove it. She turned back to the flower bed and knelt down. "It's okay," she said softly, continuing her morning routine as if nothing was wrong. "They're just visiting. You're safe here." The mulch didn't respond. Why would it? It was wood chips and splinters, no matter what Hendricks said about it sensing emotions. But Sarah had learned over 3 months that talking to it made her feel better, and maybe that was the point. Maybe the chair, or what remained of it, responded to the calmness in her voice, not the words themselves. She was pruning the roses when the greenhouse door opened. "Completely unnecessary expenditure of resources," Director Kearns was saying as she walked in. "The object was neutralized. Keeping the remains serves no scientific purpose and represents an ongoing risk." "The remains are stable," Hendricks said, his voice tight. "We've had 0 incidents since implementing the current care protocol." "Care protocol?" Kearns's laugh was sharp. "You're watering garbage and calling it containment." Sarah didn't turn around, but her hands stilled on the pruning shears. She could feel it, a change in the air, a subtle shift like the moment before a thunderstorm. The greenhouse had gotten colder. "Ms. Reeves is our horticulturist," Hendricks said. "She's been managing the containment area for 3 months. Sarah, would you mind explaining your routine to Director Kearns?" Sarah finally turned. The 2 tactical officers had fanned out, hands resting casually on their sidearms. Kearns stood in the center of the greenhouse, her expression a mix of disdain and boredom. "I water the bed twice daily," Sarah said, keeping her voice level. "Morning and evening. I maintain the roses, keep the soil properly aerated. And I talk to it." "Talk to it," Kearns repeated. "Yes." "To wood chips. To what remains of something that was destroyed," Sarah said, and she couldn't quite keep the edge from her voice. "Something that was helping people before your organization decided it needed to be eliminated." One of the tactical officers, young, buzz-cut, the kind of face that had never questioned an order, laughed. "Jesus. You people actually believe this thing was alive?" "It was an anomaly. A reality distortion. We corrected it." "You fed it through a wood chipper," Sarah said. "We neutralized the threat using appropriate force," Kearns said. "The casualties were unfortunate but expected when dealing with unstable phenomena. Now, Dr. Hendricks, I'll need you to authorize the removal of these remains. They should have been incinerated months ago. We'll take care of it today." "No." Hendricks stepped forward. "That's not going to happen. This facility operates under its own charter. This facility cooperates with collective oversight or loses its funding," Kearns interrupted. Page 47 of your charter, Dr. Hendricks. Read the fine print. She gestured to the tactical officers. Bag the remains. All of them. We'll dispose of them properly this time. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. Sarah felt at first a pressure in her chest, like the air had become solid. The two tactical officers moved toward the flower bed, and that's when she saw the mulch move. Not shifting like disturbed soil. Moving with purpose, the fragments orienting themselves, hundreds of tiny pieces of wood all turning to face the approaching men. Stop, Sarah said. Not shouting, but firm. Don't touch it. The younger officer ignored her, reaching for a plastic evidence bag. His partner was a step behind. The mulch exploded upward. Not physically, nothing moved in space. But suddenly both officers were choking, hands clawing at their throats, eyes wide with panic and incomprehension. They dropped to their knees, making wet, desperate sounds. What? Kearns started. It's in their lungs, Hendricks said, his voice hollow. The fragments. They're teleporting into their lungs. Sarah could see it happening through the men's gasping mouths, tiny splinters appearing on their tongues, in their throats, forcing their way up from inside. The younger officer was coughing blood, each spasm bringing up more wood fragments, like his body was trying to expel something that was generating faster than he could clear it. Make it stop, Kearns said, and for the first time, her voice carried something other than arrogance. Make it stop! We can't, Hendricks said. Once it perceives a threat, they're going to die. Yes. Sarah was already moving. She didn't think, didn't plan, just dropped to her knees between the choking officers and the flower bed. Between the traumatized thing that was defending itself and the men who represented everything it had learned to fear. Stop, she said to the mulch. Not commanding, not pleading. Just asking. Please stop. The greenhouse was silent except for the wet, horrible sounds of the officers drowning on wood. I know what they were going to do, Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. I know what you're feeling. But this, she gestured to the dying men. This is what they did to you. Becoming what hurt you. I know you're angry. I know you're scared. But you were kind once. You helped people. That's what you were. The younger officer collapsed forward, his face turning purple. You can choose, Sarah said. Right now. You can be what they made you, or you can be what you were before. Please, choose what you were. For a long moment, nothing changed. The officers continued to suffocate. Kearns was shouting into her phone. Hendricks stood frozen, helpless. Then, one by one, the splinters began to emerge. Not violently, almost gently. They teleported from the men's lungs to their mouths, appearing on their tongues, allowing themselves to be coughed out. Both officers collapsed onto their sides, gasping and retching, but breathing. Alive. The fragments settled back into the flower bed, resuming their positions among the soil and roses. The pressure in the air dissipated. Sarah stayed kneeling, her hands shaking now that the moment had passed. She looked down at the mulch and saw something that made her breath catch. One of the larger fragments had changed position, moving closer to where she knelt. It was maybe 3 inches long, curved, and in the greenhouse light she could see what it had once been part of, the arm of a chair, carved with delicate details. Fingers, she realized. It was a wooden hand. She reached out slowly and touched it. The wood was warm. "Sarah." Hendrix's voice was quiet. "Look." She followed his gaze to the flower bed. The mulch was moving again, but not aggressively. The fragments were rearranging themselves, clustering together, trying to form something. Not succeeding, there were too many pieces missing, too much damage done, but trying. Remembering. Director Kearns left without another word, her officers stumbling after her. Sarah heard the SUVs peel out of the parking lot 20 minutes later. She stayed in the greenhouse, watching the fragments slowly, painstakingly try to reconnect. By evening, they'd managed to form something approximating a leg, crude, incomplete, but recognizable as furniture rather than mulch. Hendrix brought her dinner. "You should go home. Get some rest." "In a bit." He sat down beside her. "What you did, I've never seen anything like that. How did you know it would work?" "I didn't." Sarah touched the wooden hand again. It had stayed close to her all afternoon, like it was keeping watch. Or thanking her. "I just thought. If someone had shown it mercy when it needed it most, maybe it wouldn't have become what it is. Maybe it's not too late for that." They sat in silence, watching the fragments work. "It's trying to rebuild itself," Hendrix said finally. "I know. Even with pieces missing, it's trying to be what it was." "Yes." By midnight, the fragments had formed something recognizable, the rough outline of a chair, incomplete and fragile, but present. Sarah could see the shape it was reaching for, the reclining woman, elegant and welcoming. It wasn't there yet. Might never be fully there. But it was trying. She watered it one last time, the fragments glistening in the greenhouse lights. "Thank you," she said softly, "for choosing." The wooden hand moved slightly, adjusting its position. Not quite a gesture, but close. Sarah went home and slept better than she had in months. Over the following weeks, more fragments assembled themselves. The chair was learning to be whole again, piece by piece. It would never be what it was, too much had been lost, too much trauma inflicted. But it was becoming something new, not the benevolent chair that helped strangers, and not the weapon that killed in self-defense. Something that had been broken and was choosing, slowly, to heal. 3 months after the incident, a janitor in the West Wing called Sarah in a panic. He'd been working late, his back aching from mopping floors, when he'd found a chair sitting in the hallway. Mahogany, beautiful despite its rough construction, with visible gaps where pieces were still missing. He'd sat down without thinking. 15 minutes later, his back pain was gone. When Sarah arrived, the chair was gone. But in the greenhouse, the fragments in the flower bed seemed to glow in the moonlight, warm and content. She knelt down and touched what remained of the wooden hand. "Welcome back," she whispered. The wood was warm beneath her fingers, and this time, she was certain it squeezed back. Not quite whole. Not yet. Maybe never. But healing.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.